Welcome back to the Mom and Mind podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kat. In our episode today, we are talking with Dara DeMary. She is sharing her experience through 4 pregnancies, which all ended in premature births, and all of her children were in NICU stays for varying lengths of time. She experienced anxiety, OCD, rage, and depression, and it took her years to shed the stigma and shame associated with the perinatal mood and anxiety disorders that she experienced. In part because although she grew up in the church, her postpartum struggles left her feeling incredibly isolated, alone, and shamed, in part because the support she did receive from the church wasn't enough for her healing process. She needed medical help because the support that she got from the church wasn't quite enough. She goes on to explain more about how that impacted her and also what she is doing now. She has made it her personal mission to gather stories of other Christian women who suffered in silence and use their voices to help encourage women in the church to speak up and speak out about postpartum mood disorders. And her work is culminating in a nonprofit called Postpartum Faith. I'm really grateful that Dara is sharing her experience with us today. So let's meet her. Welcome, Dara. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I would love to start wherever you're comfortable with your story and kind of what's gone on for you and what's shaped your life in this perinatal period.
Okay. I got pregnant originally and miscarried my first.
Mm,
That really took a toll on me, and it took a little while to get pregnant again.
mm.
When I did become pregnant again, it was with twins.
Oh,
We were completely shocked
yeah,
that it
yeah.
was twins, but we had twins. Um, that whole pregnancy, I was considered high risk,
Mm,
and they told me that I wasn't going to ever meet my actual due date. So I was
okay.
mentally prepared to not meet the due date.
Hmm.
However, I wasn't prepared to actually have premature twins
Mm,
and all the complications that came along with it.
yeah.
Um, they were born 32 weeks, so they were born 8 weeks early.
Uh-huh.
And my son was growth restricted. My
Mm.
daughter was just small. And I had severe preeclampsia.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Um, so when I had them, they were admitted into the NICU.
Hmm.
I was prepared for that mentally, but emotionally, I had no idea what was going to happen with that.
Right.
Um, because they were admitted to the NICU, I kind of was in just survival mode.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, of course.
yeah,
How could you, right? How could you be anything else?
yeah.
It's kind of a shock to the
So,
system.
yeah. So they were in there. They were in for 3 weeks and then they got released from the NICU. My son, however, I knew something wasn't right, and he ended up getting admitted to CHOP, which is the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So now I had one newborn at home and one in downtown Philadelphia hospital. So I had to
Wow.
navigate having a newborn at home and getting downtown
Is
at the
that
same
a
time.
long distance? Like,
It's a it's about 45 minutes
yeah,
driving into the city.
yeah.
Um, However, we were able to work something out with like the Ronald McDonald House, and we were able
Nice.
to finally get like the twins together. But he was in there for like another 3 weeks.
Okay.
So when they came home, I didn't trust anybody to look after them except for myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I sacrificed sleep,
Yeah.
which led to sleep deprivation.
Right.
There were nights when I would get maybe 45 minutes of sleep
Wow. A total.
total
Oh my gosh. Oh,
because
that's hard. Yeah.
because I was trying to nurse them, but
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't working out. They actually didn't latch until they were 4 months old.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pumping every night. So I would feed one, I would
Mm-hmm.
pump, I would feed another. And by that time, the other was waking up to
Right.
eat.
Right.
So that sleep deprivation really, really affected my anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Um,
Right. And the whole situation already is so anxiety producing
yeah.
from birth and on.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons he was admitted back into CHOP is because my son actually stopped breathing on us and
Oh
he turned
no.
blue. So we had to rush him to that hospital.
Oh my gosh.
So when they were home, he was on a monitor to make sure that he was still breathing,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't trust the monitor.
Yeah.
I had to physically make sure that he was breathing so I wasn't sleeping.
Right. Yeah. Was anybody up with you, or did you have people coming to try and relieve you at all?
I had a friend offer, and she came over one night and she helped me. I was still up pumping for the twins, but she took over some of the feedings.
Nice.
And I had my mom who would do some feedings at nighttime, and of
Mm-hmm.
course, my husband.
Right. Right. Okay. But still, even with other people helping, did you still feel like you were super vigilant?
I just was constantly. I mean, months went on, and I didn't know that this was anxiety. I didn't know that it was any type of like um, postpartum disorder. I filled out the surveys at the end of like my hospital stay, and
Mhm.
because I didn't have depression,
Yeah.
all my answers were checked off. I wasn't even on the radar.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a huge, huge problem because anxiety is really prevalent.
Right. And I'm super happy I have my kids. There was nothing on there that would have put up any red flags for a doctor.
Right.
However, when I was home, I started to feel like a crazy person.
Mm.
I mean, I would check on my twins. I would watch them in the monitor and I would watch them breathe,
Yeah.
and then I would get up and I would check on them and make sure that they were breathing because I didn't trust myself looking into the monitor.
Yeah.
So I would be getting up 20 times in an hour just making sure that they were still breathing. It
Right.
was terrifying.
Yeah. Right. The reassurance kind of, did it last for a minute and then,
It would Sometimes it would last, a few seconds. I would go in the bedroom, I would make sure they were breathing, I would come back in the living room, I would sit down, and then I would get that panicked feeling all over again, and I would have to
Mhm.
get back up and go check, and then I would feel okay. I would come back, I would sit down, panic would wash over me.
Right.
And
Yes.
then the feeling of them stop breathing led to more anxiety and intrusive thoughts, which I came to find out that's what they were,
Right.
is
Right.
intrusive thoughts.
Right.
So even them sitting in their in their seats in the living room, if I had the back door open, I would, if I went to the bathroom, I would picture somebody coming in and stealing them from my
Mm.
living room.
Yeah.
I would picture dropping them and just all these insane images. And
Super scary.
yeah, finally, um, I knew that it couldn't be normal because I had never seen any other mom that I knew act the way that I was acting or
Hmm.
doing the things that I was doing. So it was just this gut feeling. I knew something wasn't right. And
How far along after they were born did you realize that?
it was probably about 6 months.
Oh man, that is a
Yeah,
long time to
it's a
suffer
really
like
long
that.
time. Yeah.
With
And
still hardly
so
any sleep that whole time.
it got a little bit better. Um, when they weren't in the newborn stage anymore and
Hmm.
they were sleeping a little bit longer, I was able to get a little bit more sleep.
Uh-huh.
My husband, however, he works in the hospital, so um, he would work a 12-hour shift, and then he would come home around 8 o'clock at night. I would sleep from like 9 to midnight, and then wake up and feed the twins, and then he would go to sleep from like 12 to 5 a.m.
Hmm.
and then get up and do it all over.
Wow.
So
Oh, right. So he wasn't sleeping much either at that point,
no,
anyways, right?
no. So then finally, I started to Google and realized that this was like anxiety.
Mm,
And I found like the description of like postpartum anxiety, and I was like, wow, I think this might be what I have, because
hmm
it's not normal, and I wasn't like this before having kids, and it completely took over everything in
Yeah.
me. I was afraid to go anywhere with them.
Yeah.
Um, so I did end up emailing my doctor through like the patient portal, and the twins were about 7 months old at this point, and she messaged me back, and one of the nurses messaged me back and said, basically I was out of their window, the postpartum window, for them to be able to help me.
This
And if
is
I
to the
felt like,
OB, your OB.
yes, the
Yeah.
OB.
Yeah.
And then if I felt like I was in crisis, to go to the ER, otherwise to um, seek a therapist.
Mm,
And I thought to myself, okay, well, I guess like I don't even know where to start to find a therapist, and I don't want to talk to a therapist. I thought she would just give me, some anxiety medicine, and I'd, I'd be okay. But there was no direction,
mm.
no website, no resources, just go to the ER or find a therapist. That was her
Okay.
options.
Right. Yeah, and
So,
that's tough. I mean, I don't know your situation, but for people who've never met with a therapist, that's like it's yeah, you don't even know where to start.
right. And I had two like 7-month-old twins at home.
Hmm
I was panicked to leave them. I wasn't there was nothing that I was gonna do to leave them with
Right.
anybody else but me.
Right.
Um, and I didn't even know where to start.
Of course.
There
Yeah.
was no website. Everything that I was Googling was like based on like the the Christian aspect of like mental health, from things that I had basically grew up with in the church. So there's this like stigma in the church with
Mm.
like depression and anxiety and basically mental health in general. I just like I wanted to know what to do, and I had nothing um, in the church or anybody that I could talk to or ask questions.
Mm.
I was literally on the computer Googling if a Christian is allowed to get help
Oh,
for postpartum anxiety.
oh my gosh.
And I wasn't finding anything. I went to like my church's
Hmm
online resources.
hmm
I listened to sermons on depression and anxiety,
mm
but there was never any mention of like postpartum anxiety,
mm
postpartum depression. It was just depression in general.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't feel like any of those things related to me.
Right.
So I never actually found like Postpartum Support International, which is something that I would have, you know, appreciated finding online. I
Yeah.
guess I just wasn't putting in the right keywords, or that wasn't exactly the thing that I was looking for. I was looking for if I was allowed to go get help,
Yeah.
instead of just trying to pray this all away.
So I assume at that point too, you had been using prayer a lot.
I prayed constantly, and I was not getting any better. And I felt like I was just slipping away further and further and getting more wrapped up in this anxiety, and these intrusive thoughts just completely like overwhelmed me.
Yeah.
And it was to the point where I felt like I was failing as not only a mother, but like as a Christian as well, because I could not shake this off. And I couldn't get happy, and I couldn't, you know, you're you look and you're given these like Bible verses where it says, don't be anxious for anything.
Mm.
And it's it's not that I was choosing to be anxious.
Right.
It was it was postpartum anxiety.
Right.
It's a mental illness,
Yeah.
and I needed to know that it was okay to go get help.
Right. Um, oh, that I mean it's so hard when you know that something's not right, and you're trying to get help, and it feels like there's nothing, or there's no
Yes.
answers. And, I mean, I assume at some point it starts to feel, I wouldn't, not desperate. That's not the right word, but like you're just, you cannot find what you're looking for, and
I did get to a point where I was desperate to find
mm,
something to help me.
mm,
Um, there was no way that I could keep living the way that I was living.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um, I mean, I couldn't, I was completely like frozen in this anxiety and in this state of like the OCD where I needed to be free from it.
yeah,
And I didn't know what to do because I contacted my doctor
mm-hmm,
and I was praying and I was trying to do things and I was looking online for help and I couldn't find anything to help me.
yeah,
And then there was one day where I just, in my many searches online, I found a random blog post from a woman who just explained that these psychologists, psychiatrists, they are they're given this what do you say? They're given these skills and this knowledge to be able to help people, and it's okay for a Christian to seek that out
mm,
because it's the same as if you were had to have a physical condition.
mm-hmm,
You wouldn't hesitate going to the doctor
right,
to help your broken foot, to help with your stomach pain or headaches.
yep,
So it's the same thing. And when I read that, it kind of clicked. And I was like, okay,
mm,
okay, I guess it is okay
mm-hmm,
because, yeah, God has given these people the knowledge and the skill to be able to help me. So I ended up still not reaching out for help. It was, my twins were about 13 months
mm.
at this point,
So
and
sorry, just for a timeline, from like 6 or so months that you've
mhm,
kind of figured something was going on to 13 months, you're
yeah,
still kind of without the support that you need, but searching.
yes.
Um,
So because I had contacted my doctor, it was the end of October.
uh-huh.
And then coming up, it was all the holidays. We had Thanksgiving, we had
Mm,
Christmas, and then my twins' first birthday. And in my head, I'm like, okay, well, I've lived this way this long. What's a few more weeks, a few more months?
mm,
So I waited until after their first birthday. And finally, my husband stepped in and he did a quick Google search. Literally, it took him maybe 30 seconds to find a phone number for me to call. And that was to the Postpartum Stress Center, um, which is like 40 minutes away from my house.
mm-hmm.
And the woman called me back probably like the next day. And she's like, you have postpartum anxiety, you have postpartum OCD, and with help, you'll get better. And I was like, what? Like just hearing that from somebody, just the
Uh-huh.
confirmation of everything that I thought, it was like,
Right.
okay, like I can't tell you the relief that poured over my body. Like I
Yeah.
finally felt like, okay, it'll be okay. Like I'll get
Wow.
better.
Wow. Like just somebody hearing you and naming it. Like this is
Yes,
a
putting a name
thing.
to it. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So
So,
powerful. Really, really powerful.
right. So I finally got help and I felt it was a long, long process. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm still going through that process because you'll come to see that my next pregnancy, that I had my son and he was born right before the COVID lockdowns.
Oh, right. Great. Perfect timing.
So he was born in November, and then
Yeah.
come March, everything locked down.
Mm-hmm.
So he was about 4 months old when this all happened. My
Yeah.
husband works in healthcare, so my husband. Um, oh, I should back up for a second and
Mm.
say that my son was also born premature, and
Ah.
he also was in the NICU.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So he had respiratory distress.
Oh no.
He had like fluid in his lungs and everything.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other issue because I knew something was wrong with him and they kept telling me that he was okay. And then hours later, they had the NICU team come and look him over and they said, we have to take him to the NICU. And I said, I know. Like I knew something was wrong with
Right.
him.
You've been telling them.
Yeah.
Oh man, that is so frustrating.
Yes. So he was in, it was shorter. It was about a week that he
Mm-hmm.
was in there compared to the twins.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so when he came home, it kind of started all over again, except I had these tools that I knew and I had things that I knew to look out for.
Yeah.
And I knew there was a name to everything. So come the COVID lockdowns, my husband's in healthcare, and we decided that it would be best for him to stay at a hotel because he was with COVID patients. And at this point, we didn't
Oh,
know what COVID was. And
yeah.
my son had respiratory issues from birth. So he was away for about 2 months in a hotel.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's so long.
So I'm at home with twins who just turned three the weekend the lockdown started. And I had a 4 month old newborn. And it's us at home. I
Yeah.
can't go anywhere. I can't see anybody. And
No.
this is for 2 months. So
Oh my God. And no other help. Like you didn't have your normal
my
support
parents came
system.
over,
Okay.
but
Whew.
it's not like,
Something,
yes, yes, it's something,
but not the
but
same.
it's not, yes, I can't go anywhere. We're in the house. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
they even, they shut down the parks. So even
That's
just
right.
going for
That's
walks.
right.
So we, I was okay, I thought for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but then, like with the OCD and with the anxiety, I kind of knew how to control that, but there was like this overwhelming postpartum rage that
Mm.
started
Mm.
being locked in the house with two 3 year olds and a 4 month old, 5 month
Yeah.
old,
Yeah.
and I had no idea what that was, not a clue. But as it started to get worse and worse
Yeah.
and worse, and finally I reached back out to my therapist who had helped me the first time around, and she told me that it's normal.
Mm.
It's not normal. It's a common thing, but it's not normal
Uh-huh.
to have postpartum rage. And that's what I was experiencing. And she
Yeah.
put a name to it. And so I looked it up online and I was like, wow, this is exactly what I have. So I now had a new postpartum like mood disorder that I didn't even know existed.
Mm.
So at this point I had anxiety, OCD, and now rage.
Mm-hmm.
And I I just I didn't know that it existed again.
Yeah. Yeah. Not that one's, I mean, it's all intense. But that kind of I don't know, I find like anxiety and OCD is very physical too. Like
Mm-hmm.
you feel it in your body, but the rage feeling in your body is really distinct. It's really intense.
It was, I have never felt that in my life.
Mhm.
And when I started to scare myself, that's when I knew that I had to find help.
Right.
Um, I was scaring my kids and I was scaring myself.
Mhm.
And again, I just had this gut feeling this is not normal
Mhm.
because I've never seen anybody act like that.
Mhm.
So
Did it come out like verbally like yelling?
verbally and physically, like
Mhm.
throwing things,
Yep.
um, hitting wall.
Yep.
So,
So,
and that's
yep.
when I was like, wow, this is, and it would come in like a millisecond. Like it would just, my whole demeanor, everything would just change
Yeah.
in an instant.
Yeah. It's scary.
So
For
it was
like
terrifying.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Cuz
Yeah.
it feels really like I said intense, but um
Feel completely out of control. Like
yeah.
just, you can't. And like and then it's like over. And then you're like, wow, like, can't believe that. And that's when the shame completely like washes over you.
Yeah.
And the fact that I had to admit that to somebody to get help, it was really embarrassing
Yeah.
to have to say the things that I was experiencing.
Um, yeah, it is. And it takes quite a bit to get over again, that hurdle of that embarrassment and
Hmm.
feelings of shame around it to talk about it, to get help. Good
Like the
for
way I
you that you
describe it is
did.
like, thank you. The way I describe it is like the intrusive thoughts and the anxiety are like emotional torture. And then the rage was just like, it became like physical too.
Hmm.
So it was just something I had never experienced. But
Right.
I was able to get help for that and work through it. Um, so that was another side of the postpartum mood disorders that I didn't know existed.
Right.
Um, and then my husband and I ended up having a fourth child.
Hmm.
So when my son, my twins had just turned 5. My son was um, like 2, I believe,
Hmm.
when he was born, and then we had another one, and then he also was born premature. He was
Mm.
born the same exact gestational age as our second, my second birth. So he was also admitted to the NICU.
Uh-huh.
Um, and this was like when you have kids in the NICU, there's like this mourning process that I feel like you have to go through of everything that you thought the birth was going to be like.
Yeah.
And then the moments afterwards, you never get those moments back.
Right.
And it's not at all what you thought it would be. I never got to hold my twins until they were like days old.
Yeah.
Um, those moments are just taken from you.
Yeah.
And it's like something that you have to mourn. And our fourth is our last. And I prayed so hard that I would have a healthy baby and I would be able to hold him. And it just didn't happen. And so I had to come to terms with the fact that I would never birth a healthy baby. All my kids ended up in the NICU. And it was really, really hard to process.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because I just had this like joy and this feeling that everything was going to be okay, at least this fourth time. And it
Hmm.
wasn't.
Hmm.
And, um, and that's another thing that another side of the postpartum came to hit me.
Yeah.
And this time it was depression.
Yeah.
I was, after he was released from the NICU, about a week, maybe he was a day less than my second son.
Hmm.
But we brought him home, and I mean, everything's fine and they're okay now. But it's just those moments that you have that you never get back. And
Yeah.
it's just a process that you have to go through. So I had no idea that I would get hit again with that I would get hit again postpartum. And this
Yeah.
time it wasn't anxiety. It wasn't the OCD, although I do still struggle with those.
Hmm.
It wasn't so much the rage. It was depression. I was so sad,
Yeah.
like a sadness that I had never felt before,
Yeah.
constantly crying and just hopeless. And um, I just couldn't believe that it was happening again.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And each time just such a different set of feelings.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So we're here now.
Hmm.
My son is a year old. Um, and I feel like I'm almost to that I'm almost through the tunnel. I
Mm.
feel like at this point, I know that I'm going to be able to get through it. Um, and then this chapter of my life is going to be over,
Hmm.
as far as like the postpartum period with all these kids. And that's why I don't want anybody else to experience the things that I had to experience. So
Right.
because I went through so many different things, I have I have resources and things like that that I can offer to people, and I want to be able to do that now.
Yeah. Um, I mean, so this is, first of all, it's years of um emotional upheaval
Yes.
at this point. I mean, certainly there are times where it got a little better and whatnot,
Yeah.
but it's a long time to be in this whirlwind of.
And it's because I have been, for like over 6 years, I've either been pregnant or nursing a
Hmm.
child
Hmm.
also. So the hormones are just, they've never leveled out.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why I'm still in it right now. So we'll, you know, but I know that I will be okay.
That is like so important. Just knowing that, since you got the help, and you initially after the twins you got help, and you knew a little bit more about what to do the second time, and um, I don't know what happened after the first time in terms of, or the third birth, in terms of therapy and whatnot, but once you know that you can get better, you might not know how or how long, but when you know that that is available to you, it 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 at least gives you something to hold on to.
Mhm. And hearing the words like, this is temporary, those are so comforting to know that
Yeah.
I won't always feel the way that I have felt.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really powerful. And so I'm curious if we can go kind of back through a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, I know initially you kind of were trying to figure out and turning to the church, and trying to understand from that perspective, like what help was available to you, or if you could even get help.
Mhm.
I guess throughout your whole process, um, where has your sort of search taken you?
So I have personally, this is just me and I can only speak from my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
I never felt the support from the church that I wished that I would have felt.
Hmm.
I even have emailed, not only like my church, but I've emailed like other churches and things like that just to see what resources they have for women that are postpartum and that are struggling.
Uh-huh.
And everything is that I have received back is that they would pray, they would pray for me, um, and that they would suggest speaking to your doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my own experience, I spoke to my doctor, and my doctor wasn't helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how many other women have felt the same way. So after you speak to your doctor and you have somebody praying for you, where do you go? What do
Mm-hmm.
you do?
That's not
And that's
enough.
where, right. And that's where I felt this, that I was just hung out to dry, basically. There
Mm-hmm.
was no tangible resource. So my personal goal is to start a nonprofit to avoid any other women to have to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to have, the links to, postpartum support international, postpartum stress center. I want women to know that these resources are available,
Yeah.
and that if you're a Christian, you can reach out to a non-faith based organization for help,
Mm-hmm.
because there's women who are trained specifically to help mothers,
Right.
to help new mothers, to help postpartum mothers
Mm-hmm.
deal with these issues. It's nothing to do with lack of faith, and it's
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with the fact that you haven't prayed enough and that you're not reading enough scripture. I mean, I have reached out and I've asked hundreds of women because of social media, and I've gotten so many responses with the same, where women have not felt that they were able to turn to the church for help. And if
Mm-hmm.
they have turned to the church, they were told to pray, or they were not given the support that they needed. Now, I'm not advocating that pastors or pastors' wives or anybody like that treat women who are postpartum. It's a
Right.
mental health disorder, and they're not trained to do that. However, they can point women in the right direction, and they
Mm-hmm.
can offer tangible resources to women who are struggling
Right.
instead of just saying that they're going to pray for them. Yes, offer to pray for them, but also give them a website or a phone number, or maybe sit with them, and while they make that phone call, you can be there as support for them.
Mm-hmm.
Women's ministries can actually help new moms and maybe set up support or a meal train or something like that, or
Right.
reach out to new moms,
Right.
and ask the mom, how are you feeling? You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
that wasn't there. I never got asked how I was emotionally,
Right.
but I don't blame anybody because nobody really knows how to ask that. And I
Right.
also am really good at hiding the fact that I was struggling.
Right.
I
Yeah.
acted completely fine. I got up and I got dressed every day. I put on
Mm-hmm.
makeup. I
Mm.
was I was the best mom that I could be. But inside I felt like I was like dying.
Right. And yeah, I mean, I have so many questions about that. For one, um, I think a lot of people try and do that because um, it's hard with it, whatever, like shame and um, I don't know, embarrassment or whatever it is that you're feeling. You don't really want people to know that you're
Mhm.
struggling, but at the same time, you need help. And it's really hard to hold both of those at the same time, to be struggling so deeply and also just trying to keep it looking like you're all together. And that is
Mhm.
like its own stress.
Yeah, it is.
It's
Yeah.
really, really hard to do.
Yeah, and I
Um,
just want other women to know like there's help available, but they need to know what kind of help to get
mhm,
and where to get it.
mhm.
So that's kind of my goal, is to try and help women get those resources that they need.
Yeah. What did you hear from, the other people that you reached out to? Were you hearing the same thing? That they,
So I had a couple people who really they they kind of backed the church leaders' position of just saying speak to your doctor,
hmm
and I understand that.
hmm
And I'm not advocating for pastors to counsel women who are dealing with these postpartum issues.
right.
Um, and I understand that nobody's going to know all the resources available.
Yeah.
But if you have a mom who's struggling with these mental health issues, and all you tell her is that you're going to pray for her, and you give her a couple scripture verses to read, and it kind of makes you feel like you have you don't have enough faith to get yourself out of this.
Uh-huh. Right. Like almost like you're not good enough or you're not doing good enough.
That's how I felt, is that
Yeah.
I couldn't get myself out of feel the way that I was feeling.
Mm.
And I felt like I was getting deeper and deeper into it. And I was struggling more and more, and I was praying more and more, but I didn't know that I wasn't dealing with it the right way.
Ah. That is interesting, or interesting is not the right word, but it's just another added layer of complexity that you're already feeling how you're feeling, which is awful, like feeling
Mm-hmm.
terrible, worst you've ever felt, in many ways, I assume. Um, and then on top of that, to not feel like you're doing good enough by your faith,
Mm-hmm.
is like another layer of, I assume, a feeling of shame.
Yeah, it's not
Like you feel
something that I
worse.
wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk about it.
hmm
Um, that's why I tried to read scripture verses about depression and anxiety. And I, I, I know that I need to rely on God for things. I know that he can heal. I know that. I know that he can heal somebody, and it just wasn't happening for me.
Mm.
I needed like a doctor to help me,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed to know that it was okay to reach out for help.
Mm.
Um, Now, when I look online, I do see more resources available than there were 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I myself have been gathering resources that I can give to people.
Nice.
Um, and I'm trying to make a website and have these resources available. Um, I'm trying to set up a nonprofit called Postpartum Faith, so that way women of faith can know that it's okay to get the help that they need
Mm.
for these postpartum issues, and they can know where to get the help that they
Mm-hmm.
need.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a book that I recently read. It's called A Mom is Born. I wish so badly that I had that book when I was going through this.
Mm-hmm.
When I first gave birth to my twins. It's these type of resources that I want to make sure are widely known for women of faith, and that they can get their hands on them,
Yeah.
and that they can know where to go to get the help that they need. And it has to start somewhere. And I felt like I went through this for a reason,
Mm.
and I I wish that I didn't, but I did. And
Yeah.
now I'm almost to the other side, and I see everything that I went through was for a reason. It made me who I am now,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm now just starting to become vocal and share my story. It took me 6 years to be able to do that,
Right.
to get over the shame, and to be able to speak out and let people know. And I want God to be able to use my story to help other women.
Mm.
So I'm putting myself out there,
Yeah.
and I'm sharing my story, and I want to be a resource to help other women. So that's
Yeah. I mean, it's really, really powerful. And you've had to go through a lot and endure a lot to get to this point. And I mean, I hear that you're like continuing on your journey just to feel the best that you can feel. But I just am constantly amazed by just like the stories like yours, with such intense suffering, and how it is like turned into purpose and to
I mean, I've
help other
had women
people.
tell me that they were told to sniff essential oils,
Mm.
to relax, to read scripture, to just pray more. Like, but the most absurd was just smell essential oils
Hmm.
to relax. That was, I mean,
It's not a
that's
cure.
not a cure. It's not. And the fact that, like, these women in the church, these are things that they're told.
Hmm. Right. And sure, like if that's something that helps you relax or whatever, like there you need to have all kinds of tools in your toolbox, but it's if just in general, if you're told that something like that or one or two things is just supposed to help you feel better when you're dealing with a real, like you said before, like just like you would go to a doctor if you like broke your leg, you would go to a doctor if you feel like mentally, emotionally broken by depression or anxiety. um it Yeah, oils is not gonna
Yeah, it's
do it.
it's really hard, I think, for a Christian who is going through the postpartum um, period, and who's struggling, to reach out for the help that they actually need, other than just praying. I think
Hmm.
that it's really hard, because growing up in the church, that's what we were told, is that God you know, God's a God of miracles and he can help you and he can heal you and stay close to God. And I am, and I did, but I still needed help. I
Right.
still needed that help. And the fact that I came across a random blog post and this woman just laid it out that you can still get help. Like it's okay for you
Right.
to get help. That was what I needed to hear. And thank God I found it because I don't think that I would have if I didn't come across that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and by you doing what you're doing now with postpartumfaith.org and really trying to put that resource out there, hopefully, like you're saying, somebody can find your resource and know that that help is available and they don't have to suffer in the ways that you did.
Yeah, I'm really trying to put this together. It's just me doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a mom of four.
Mm-hmm.
So the the website is very slow. I got the domain. And then I'm trying to I'm waiting for the application for the nonprofit to go through.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a slow process, but I feel like it's something that God has put on my heart to do.
Mm.
And I've gone through this for a reason, and I'm going to use it to help other people.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your path through healing. I know it's going to help so many people.
I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Please connect with Dara at postpartumfaith.org. And certainly, if you know of anybody who is within a religious community who doesn't feel particularly supported to get help for their mental health conditions related to perinatal mood or anxiety disorders, this might be a really useful episode to share with them. Like Dara said, she just needed to see that it was okay to reach out for help. And that was one of the catalysts that helped her to get the healing that she needed. Please do find Mom and Mind podcast on Instagram and Threads and follow and share these posts and these episodes. It really is the best way that you can support the work that I'm doing here and all of the beautiful stories that people have shared with us on this podcast. Thank you for being with us. Until next time.